Tim Cass, welcome to the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm so thrilled to have a chance to chat with you about USTA and all things college tennis.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Excited to be here today.
Glad to see you healthy and smiling, and the US Open's right around the corner. There's so much going on right now. As you and I are talking, Venus and Serena are on court for their 31st meeting. It's great to see tennis back in full swing.
I agree, and the campus has been reopened for 7 weeks, and while it's a bit slower, I think we even started our conversation off the air. It's just nice to see forward progress in the world we're living in today.
Absolutely. And so the thrust of our conversation today is kind of in response to an article I published a few weeks ago about college tennis, what's going on. It's not been pretty. We've seen over 60 programs cut on both the men's and the women's side across all the divisions, including NAIA and junior colleges. It's bleak out there. And I had the opportunity to speak with the ITA's Tim Russell and UTR's Mark Leshley, and we talked about the partnership they formed to offer some competitive opportunities to collegiate players as well as others to fill the gaps left by college tennis this fall. But I'm just wondering if you can help the Parenting Aces community understand what USTA's role is in college tennis.
Yeah, thanks. And so it is disturbing. We're following the program situation very, very closely. That being said, I think it should be noted that there's 2,200 tennis programs. And so as a pure percentage, losing, at my count, it was 54. It looks like you may have a more updated count of 60. It's never good. It's not good for the sport in general, and it's something we champion, and we're very lucky to have this robust collegiate model in the United States. It's candidly, we're the only country that has such a robust collegiate model. And so we are monitoring it closely. College tennis for us is really, really important. It's the aspirational dream for our youth. College sports in America, whatever sport you play, you grow up wanting to play a college sport if you're into athletics, and specific to tennis. So it's an aspirational dream for our youth. And it's also the connective tissue. If you play college tennis, you now have a background to potentially make a career in the sport, whether that's a playing career or, as I'm sitting here as a past collegiate player, I also coached in college tennis. You may make a career in a different way. You're in the broadcaster or media space. There's marketing careers, etc. There's a lot of careers in our sport, so it's a natural pathway to the career. And then it's also a pathway to staying in the game for life. And as you know, our mission at the USTA is simply to grow and promote the development of the game of tennis. So college tennis is a critical bridge as this aspirational dream and staying in the game for life. And so as it pertains to what is our role in college tennis, there's several priorities we have. We've got them bucketed specifically in 5 buckets. And one would be sort of this concept around advocacy and relevancy. How do we help elevate the game of college tennis to bring relevancy to it? And there's several things we're doing, and we can get into some details. Another bucket for us is sort of this pathway, this American pathway to college tennis. How do we create opportunities for our American juniors to find the right fits in the collegiate space? Education is another. Education for us specific to college tennis, while there is professional development education, in our world, we're really focusing on how do we educate the players and also the parents and the private coaches on the trickiness, if you will, of the pathway to colleges and the offerings. There's 2,200 programs. What's the right fit for me as X level, whether that's Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college. But we do think there's a spot for everybody, including tennis on campus. we play a role in competition and events in the collegiate space. As an example, and I think this is one of the really unexpected positives of the USTA National Campus. I think you're aware that we're 3.5 years into the doors opening here, 100-court facility in Orlando, Florida, and college tennis has become one of the pillars of the campus. We host 400 dual matches a year of all divisions, all live streamed. We host College Match Day, which is kind of a high-level showcase of college tennis, if you will, made for TV on Tennis Channel event. We think that's a positive. We host numerous conference championships. We hosted the NCAA championship. We host again the NCAA championships, Division I this year and Division III next year. So we're in the events space, and we feel like that's a real role, not just at the campus, but we influence or host events other spots as well. But the campus has quickly proved to be a good hub for a lot of collegiate activity. And then the other for us is our partnership, specifically the ITA and or the UTR or the NCAA, USPTA, PTR. There's a lot of connective partners that college tennis impacts a lot of those folks.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so you guys definitely have your hand in it. And obviously, USTA understands that college tennis is the carrot for so many families who choose tennis for their kids. The tennis development pathway is not inexpensive. It's very time consuming. It is a marathon, not a sprint, as we say all the time. And so there's some concern with these program cuts that we're seeing. And I get that it's a small percentage, but it's still, over 60 programs. That's a lot. And it's a lot of opportunities that are cut. If you multiply that even times 10, which is a big roster. So, what do we do as the tennis world to make sure that as these collegiate tennis opportunities may be getting reduced, that we still offer something of value to entice families to start their kids in this sport and jump on that developmental pathway?
Well, great. And I want to make clear, I share your concerns. So whether it's 60, whether it's 20, any program being cut is a concern of the USTAs. And one of our major roles is trying to help bring relevancy to these programs. And tennis, I think out of crisis sometimes comes opportunity. I think we're learning that tennis is a natural social distancing sport, something we need to build on and promote. And I think as the restrictions get lessened across the country, I think you'll see much more push from a marketing perspective to attract those either stagnant players or new players to our game, or more youth to our game. And so I think collectively, I think that can be a positive. I would tell you, one of my hopes, it's me speaking here, but I think one of the things we're all learning, as you mentioned, tennis can be an expensive sport, and it can be a tricky pathway to navigate for a talented junior, and a lot of resources are necessary to go into it. I think you're seeing a lot of good discussion around regionalizing play.
Yes.
And I think that collectively we're on to something there. There's other models that other countries use in a very good way to regionalize play, and I think you're seeing some good efforts with UTR and the ITA. Certainly there's some pieces that the USTA I think is going to get involved in. But how do you regionalize play? One of the biggest opportunities, there's 20,000 college players. Right now, those college players, and I know you know this, typically when they turn 18 and go to college and maybe they graduate at age 22, primarily play amongst themselves. And primarily they're at the highest level in America. Those 20,000 players make up the highest group of players from a level-based play. And so imagine if our juniors and our college and our young adults, if there was a model to put together where they did interact more often, and that's how you can create regional play in my opinion, there's a lot of juniors, the best juniors in the state of Florida, some of them may not like me saying this, would have a very, very difficult time beating the UCF players or the University of Florida
Sure.
or the Florida State players or South Florida or even Rollins, but they don't play each other. So how do we make it more affordable? Let's find a model that regionalizes play and interact those folks together. And I think that could even enhance our sport as a whole.
And we're seeing that with this partnership with the ITA and UTR and this fall circuit that they're doing. And both Tim and Mark mentioned that, they may carry this through into the spring, depending on what happens with spring sports at the college level. So I think we are starting to see this more. And, it'll be interesting to see where USTA kind of fits into that regionalized play model, because I know I've been at the table for a lot of these conversations about what's going on in Europe in terms of junior development and, these tournament series where juniors are doing exactly what you're talking about, Tim, where they're competing against the top adults in the area. It's an opportunity to bring everybody together and keep everybody close to home. And certainly with COVID-19, anything we can do to eliminate travel, eliminate the need to stay at a hotel or eat out or any of that is a positive right now. So I'm thrilled to hear you talk about that in terms of what USTA is doing.
Well, if I could just add one, because I think the key to this short and long term is there's a plethora of tournament offerings, especially right now out there. And I think the key to success is the coordination of these tournament offerings. And I think it will take some very good communication for the different governing bodies or those active in this space to work together collectively. So a person at X level has a strategic schedule that is regionalized and it's well thought out, as opposed to 5 events that would be competing for the same person. Say, for example, where you're living in Southern Cal, that it needs to be really well thought out. Maybe there's one in San Diego this weekend, and then next weekend it's Fresno or San Francisco, and the next weekend it's Phoenix, Arizona, all potentially within driving distance. But right now we're seeing, hey, there might be a really high-level USTA junior tournament, and 60 miles away, there's another event that would be competing for those same people. And so I think we've got to coordinate schedules. Mm-hmm. And in the United States, as you well know, is a pretty big footprint.
Yeah.
And but I think it's an exciting time. And what I do like is happening, especially in the collegiate space, is athletic directors and administrators are using this word regional, not just for the sport of tennis, obviously, but for all sports, because some of these budgets have really grown out of control and there's overspending. And I think we can rein that in, which will also sustain the college tennis programs.
Yeah. And, it's funny because I have talked about this recently that I never really paid attention to anything other than tennis at the collegiate sports level. I just not interested. But all of a sudden, I've been paying very close attention to college football and its impact on all the other sports, and especially tennis. I've learned more in the last 3-4 months about how college sports works than I ever wanted to know. And sadly, it is a budgetary issue. And a lot of these universities are using COVID-19 as the excuse to cut these programs, when in fact, they've had these budget problems well before COVID-19 ever, was even a thought. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that, and it will be very interesting to see what happens if football gets pushed to the spring, as now is being discussed, or if it only happens on one half of the country and not on the other half in the fall. There's so much going on and so much up in the air.
You're exactly right, though, and it's concerning the trickle down, and I think people, until the last 5 days had no idea that football was a $7 billion business. And for all intents and purposes, football is funding the vast majority of Olympic sports and college athletics. And there is a trickle down effect. One of the other things that we're working really hard on currently is really opening up your tennis facility to the public. And there's about 30% of the schools that do it and about 70% that don't. But we feel like those that can turn their collegiate facility into a community hub really can kind of engage the community in many ways, where it helps to build relationships, bring in tournaments, which brings media support. You can create a fan base. There's philanthropic and sponsorship opportunities by building these relationships with people if your facility is open. Very few programs that have been cut have their facilities been open to the public, and where it's viewed as a really piece of the fabric of the community and critical to the wellness of that community. So we're creating a playbook, if you will, to help colleges and assist colleges and coaches and administrators. How can we do this? They've got a wonderful asset. Most college facilities are at the highest level in terms of a facility infrastructure in a community. So how can we utilize those more often to engage our youth, engage our adults, engage faculty, staff, et cetera?
Is there maybe a grant program in the works for schools that do that?
Yeah, interesting. So we are working on a concept surrounded around that. I think right now the coaches are very interested. We did a survey 2 weeks ago to just Division I on this subject, although we believe we will attack Division II and III, but had 190 responses in 48 hours. And it was very good information, basically how they were using their facility. And this is where these numbers are coming from. But I think the coaches are motivated because they recognize this is a way to kind of set themselves apart. It's very hard to open up your facility if you're a basketball coach or a softball coach or a baseball coach or track and field. But in tennis, this is a way you can touch the community. And by touching the community, it just makes you more relevant. And I think that the response has been very, very positive on asking for us to help them do this.
Great. And, honestly, with recruiting being put on hold by the NCAA, we just heard again, they've pushed it another month where the coaches can't actively recruit. This is a great time to engage the college coaches because they're not traveling. They're not working on their recruiting in the same way that they normally would be at this point in the year, where, they would be coming off national hard courts and, working really hard. So the coaches are available. They've got time right now to engage in these kinds of conversations, I would think. And I'm glad to hear you got such a heavy response. I think that's awesome. One of the things that I have been concerned about for some time with USTA is that it seems like USTA's focus when it comes to college tennis has been solely around Division I, and more specifically around identifying the top 25 programs and focusing on those in its weekly rankings during the dual match season and all that. And as you and I both know, most junior players are not going to find a spot at a top 25 Division I program. There just aren't that many each year opening up, and those top 25 schools are recruiting the creme de la creme from around the world. And my argument is we need to shed more light on all of the other tennis programs that are out there and looking for American kids to fill their rosters. What are your thoughts on that? What is USTA talking about there?
So my thoughts are I 100% agree. And 98% of the Division III players are Americans, and roughly 50% in Division II. It's split about equally. And then in Division I, it's about 37% Americans. And so we have looked at that very, very closely. I think we have invested heavily in what we call spring break tennis and partnering with spring break tennis and utilizing the campus. I mentioned 400 primarily Division III and Division II teams come and compete over a 6-week period at the campus, of which we put in significant resource to live stream the matches and utilize kind of our media side to promote this activity. And it's proven to be, I think, very well received. And we continue to try to build on that. You may or may not know, we put in a bid to the NCAA Championships Committee. They just met on the bids. They'll announce them, but to combine all three divisions into one festival of tennis. So have Division 1, 2, and 3 men's and women's championship at one site. We had proposed to do that at the campus as a pilot. 3 out of 4 years, it'd be an 18-day festival of tennis. We would partner with Tennis Channel. We would partner with the ITA for them to bring their coaches convention here. We would bring recruiting events alongside that we'd be playing on the clay courts. And over an 18-day period, our goal is to shine a light on all three divisions at the highest level. And we think that other sports, while not combining them all, if you look at college baseball as an example, when they really built up Omaha and Omaha became really special, it really elevated the sport of baseball, and Oklahoma City's doing it now, and track and field has done it nicely in Eugene. We feel like it, to your point, we're one of the few that could touch all three divisions. And so we're excited about the proposal we put in, we're excited about the bid, and we're anxious to see what the result is. It's out of our hands now, but we did put in a bid to host that with the idea of, again, shining more light on Division 2 and 3.
So that would be the national championships for each division?
Correct.
Okay. Which, I like it. I missed having the D1 championships on a college campus when I came to the one at the campus in Lake Nona. It's a gorgeous campus, no doubt. And I know the players and the coaches absolutely loved being there, but there was something missing. And I love the idea of bringing all three divisions together and doing something. I don't know if I love it in lieu of having a national championship on an actual college campus, but y'all didn't ask me.
Well, with everything, there's pluses and minuses, and I think we were excited to host the 19 championship. We're excited to host the 21, and we're excited to host the 22 Division 3 championship. So whether it's all combined, I think one of the things, candidly, to bring 55 hours of live television coverage, it was pretty unique, and I think being a neutral site provides some opportunities that don't favor a home team, if you will, for the most part. And so I like the tradition of some of the on-campus places. When I was at Texas A&M, we hosted it there. I understand that piece, and was part of the NCAA committee that decided that it was time to rotate championships. And as you well know, it was at the University of Georgia, I think probably 18 of 19 years at a period of time. So,
yeah. So you mentioned NCAA. What is USTA's role with NCAA when it comes to collegiate tennis?
Yeah, I think we would view each other both as governing bodies. They're the governing body of collegiate athletics, and we're the governing body of the sport of tennis. And so we would have a governing body relationship with them. And I think they look to us in terms of rules, regulations. There also is a strong relationship between both of us with the ITA. They've used collectively both sets of rules, if you will. And collegiate has some nuances that are unique to the college tennis space. We have a group that's called CTAC, which is a group between the ITA, the NCAA, and ourselves that basically is a communication tool for us all to align on priorities. For the most part, I think hopefully that explains it. The NCAA, their biggest piece in the collegiate space is running the championship as a whole, which is this carrot or plum at the top, and many things trickle down from there. So we have a very strong relationship. We talk to the NCAA probably every other week on some issue or front, and we consider them a partner.
Being a non-revenue sport, we know tennis isn't high on the list with NCAA in terms of, utilizing a lot of resources and all that, and which is why the ITA and USTA have taken a stand and really become more involved in college tennis. It concerns me with all of these program cuts. What is the messaging coming out of USTA and maybe in partnership with the ITA around these program cuts, and what y'all can do together or independently working through the NCAA to ensure that college tennis continues to be a viable entity?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the first things we did with the ITA when COVID hit was we created, 10 bullet points on the importance of college tennis and sent it to all conference commissioners and athletic directors. And some of them would be quite obvious, but others would be what we talked about opening your facility to the community. It's an opportunity that many have not looked at, to be honest with you. And in these times, not only opening up, it can be a moneymaker as well, or should be a moneymaker. And so I think it does come down to relevancy. And most of the time, I guess the beauty of coaching is sometimes you have an entrepreneurial spirit. One of the best in the business, Greg Patton, and Greg was a Pied Piper, whether it was at UC Irvine or whether it was at Boise, and turned both of those communities into tennis communities. And I think that's what I challenge our coaches to do more of, and to really engage the community and elevate the sport. And by doing that, then the NCAA will look at it through a different set of lenses. I think one of the things you may agree, may disagree, but the format in college tennis, as you well know, used to be 6 singles followed by 3 doubles, 2 out of 3 sets, add scoring, and oftentimes would take 4 to 5 hours. Not very conducive to building a crowd or a following. It's very difficult to expect. And so a lot of hard work went into tinkering with the format, going back to no ad scoring, doubles first, a set followed by singles. I'm not suggesting that's perfect. I think the format still needs to be looked at. In today's world, things are changing quickly. And what is the right time frame for a dual match? The team match is incredible product, and we need to celebrate the team match. It is the plum, and we need to celebrate it, and we need to find the correct formula that allows people to attend the matches from beginning to end. So our college match day, we work very hard to draw a crowd, and oftentimes have 1,500 people. 80% of those folks leave after doubles. There's something wrong if 80% of the people are leaving after doubles. And so we need to look at that. It's hard to get 1,500 people to a college match, but imagine if you were getting 1,500 people to a college match across the country at hundreds of schools. Would that elevate the sport in the eyes of an athletic administrator and or the NCAA? I would say yes, it would. So I think we've really got to look at that. And I should probably retract a little bit. I'm not saying exactly 80%, because sometimes they'll stay through the first few games of singles, but I can tell you, and we've tracked it, that a very large percentage leave after doubles, and very few stay till the end when it's the most drama, and often the best time to be there. So we have to look at that again, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so many conversations over the years about what's the best format, what scoring system to use, all of that. And I'm no expert. I didn't play college tennis myself, but have certainly been very involved in the college tennis world for the past 10 years or so. And, watching my own kid play, and luckily watching him play for Greg Patton for a year, which was amazing. But, there's a lot of work to be done. And as you said, this whole conversation around convincing the campuses to open their facilities to the community, this isn't a new concept. This is a concept that's been discussed ad nauseum, honestly. And we know the coaches that do a phenomenal job at engaging their local communities. Greg is one of them. Manny Diaz at Georgia is another. I mean, we've seen the successful coaches who have turned their their communities into, as you said, tennis communities by engaging. We're seeing it with Winthrop right now. That's, my gosh, they're working so hard to try to save that program. They've got restaurants in their community stepping up and offering to donate proceeds and all of that. And yet, the school is still considering cutting this phenomenal program. It's really mind-boggling. And like we said at the beginning, it goes much deeper than just tennis. It's a budget thing, and we don't need to go down that rabbit hole today. But
well, one good news, I think, is we the USTA are working more closely than ever with the ITA, which in general also the college coaches, and I think we've all recognized what can we do collectively that can help, and we too are working with the NCAA as well, and it's just, I think, rowing the boat the same direction is a significant step, and I think this time that we're living in is making us all think, are we focused on the right priorities? And we continue to look at our priorities. We all have limited resources, whether it's human capital or financial, and are we putting those resources in the right place? And are we working with our partners in a collective strategic manner in order to do that? And our partners in this case also include 2,200 college coaches or programs, 4,400 coaches. So it's something that we all have a stake in, and we all should be excited about what the future could look like if we can continue to think progressively.
Absolutely. Talking about the juniors, and one of the buckets that you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation was the education bucket, and educating parents and educating coaches and players about the process, the pathway. One thing that USTA has done in recent years is a college combine where players are invited down to play. There's a fee involved, but the college coaches come and can watch them. And it's like any other sport combine with prospective student athletes. Are you aware of any discussions around expanding that concept and maybe doing multiple combines throughout the year to give these players more opportunities to be seen by coaches, and also to give the coaches more opportunities to have a hands-on look at the American players across all levels?
Yeah. So great question. So the campus was built to sort of be what's the right word? Incubator, if you will. Try things, and if it works, how can it be modeled elsewhere? So the combine was a concept of let's build this combine, and then can the 17 sections replicate this in their sections? And that's still the case. That being said, we've entered kind of a unique period. So what we're doing right now is trying to work ourselves on working with PlaySite on sort of videoing matches. I'm choosing the wrong word here, but having one-day events where we can showcase matches, tell the college coaches here's who's playing, and so they can recruit virtually, if you will. So virtual kind of events is something that, and we're working with sections on that concept as well. Prior to COVID, we had just kind of released a program that we were going to give college coaches grants to go and recruit regionally at USTA events. I think one of the things with the UTR rating that has clearly become a resource for college coaches, it also has probably taken them off the road in terms of going to a sectional event or an L1, 2, or 3 event in their region. And we know that when college coaches go and watch somebody play, they may look and say, oh, Lisa Stone, I remember her 2 years ago. Look at how much she's improved. She was having trouble with her forehand or backhand. That's improved. She's grown 4 inches. Her serves now 110 miles per hour. And so we think it's really important for the coaches to put their eyes on our American players. So we've started a grant system that is really meant to be regional in nature, not to fly across the country and recruit somebody, but to really look within your region, your state. And so we're excited about that. We put that on pause because of the situation we're in, but that will be activated again next year. But clearly we've got to get our college coaches to get eyes on our youth. And I think that's critical. And we also need our youth to stay engaged in the sport. And, too many of our youth are dropping out at age 16. And I know, from experience, it's a very competitive and tough pathway, but I think it's something that we've got to look at. And, part of that, I think, in my mind, revolves around the word fun. And tennis is a selfish sport, or can be a selfish sport. And so how do we create an atmosphere around our sport for our youth that allows them to have fun? I'm a big promoter of high school tennis as an example. I think it's a huge opportunity. Imagine
Absolutely.
If our best players played high school tennis, and 2 to 3 months out of the year they've got that experience with a team and had fun representing their high school, their community, and they learn those lessons. So I think that's an opportunity for us to look at as we create this model. And what's the right pathway for a junior? What would be wrong with playing 8 months of individual tournaments and 3 or 4 months of team events?
Yeah. No, I think it's great. One of the issues around high school tennis, and I know you know this, is these state high school associations oftentimes make it very difficult for high-level junior tennis players to compete for their schools and continue to develop their game independently and play tournaments outside of their high school team. And so maybe this is already happening, USTA can get involved with the state high school associations and, maybe help them understand why it's a win-win for the top level juniors in their high schools to be able to play.
Yeah, I agree. And it is tricky. And the high schools, as you know, play at different times of the year, some in the fall, some in the spring, because we'd love to have a high school team national championship. We think that could be a really cool pathway, and it would encourage that. And we were looking at that idea and that concept. But I think the point centers around team play and having fun and keeping our kids engaged in the game. And, many folks mature a heck of a lot between age 15, 17, 18, and that should be a period of growth. And oftentimes we're seeing people drop out of the game at that stage. And so I think that's something that we've got to really look carefully at.
Well, they have a lot of other things pulling their attention at that age, right?
That too.
So
I know I've got a 15 and 17-year-old.
Oh, I'm sorry. But it's not just tennis that suffers, with kids that age. Every sport sees extensive drop off in the teenage years. And, it's just a function of maturing and, all the other things that can attract kids away from devoting many, many hours and many, many weekends to a sport as opposed to their buddies or their music or their video games. So, yeah, we get it. What else do you want us to know about USTA's role in college tennis?
Yeah, I think we're just excited to play a role, and we're excited to continue to build on kind of these concepts and partnering with the ITA and the NCAA, and excited about what the National Campus, I think, has done and can continue to do for the sport as a whole, but specific to college tennis. I think there's some exciting things happening in the facility space out in California with the Kimmelman Center. There's a great project in Austin with these larger tennis centers, and what impact can they have on the growth of college tennis. We're excited about our partnership with Tennis Channel to have a studio here at the campus, and what can that mean to college tennis as a whole. I have maybe it's grandiose, but dreams of having a college tennis show every week, if possible, or a kind of a lead up, a road to the NCAA championships. And how do we also integrate some of these great things that the schools are doing and make it affordable to get footage of some of these great matches that could be maybe showcased elsewhere. So I think there's a lot of exciting things happening. And that's motivational in our mind, that if our youngsters can see collegiate tennis on television, much like they see college basketball and baseball and football, that's aspirational for them. It's not the answer, the only answer, but it is aspirational. And I think it also elevates the sport in terms of how an administrator views that sport, or how a donor might view that sport, and where they may look to give philanthropic gifts. So those are a couple just off the top of my head.
And I will say, I mean, I've heard more than once from businesses and employers who say when they are looking to hire, they look first to collegiate athletes, and tennis players specifically are at the top of the list of who they're looking at. So regardless of, like you mentioned earlier in the conversation, Tim, that playing college tennis leads to jobs as a coach or in other aspects of tennis, it's beyond that. It can lead to jobs across the board in all professions. And there are many, many employers out there who love hiring college tennis players. So, I think
agree.
that message needs to keep getting pushed out. And it's not all about the college tennis scholarship, but about the experience of having played college tennis and then parlaying that into opportunities after college.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the tennis players tend to be very high-level student athletes on a campus, and have a very good track record after graduation. And it's something we need to celebrate. And I think storytelling is another thing that we all need to do a good job of, which you're doing a great job. Is individually, if these collectively 2,200 schools continue to do really good storytelling, it just elevates the profile of your student athletes in your program.
One of the things you mentioned, or I'm not sure if it was you or one of the other gentlemen, but in your interview that you did with Andy Katz and Tim Russell a few weeks ago, y'all talked about getting the pro players who were former college players more involved in the college tennis scene. What are you hearing around that aspect of things?
Yeah, I think you're seeing more players crack that top 100 that came through a collegiate pathway, male and female. And so, and all of them are great advocates. They do it naturally. They're great advocates. I think the question is, how can we utilize their message more strongly, and the platforms they have more strongly? And so we continue to try to look for opportunities to do that, Lisa. And I think they are great voices for college tennis, but also college athletics. And as you mentioned, this whole pathway and the education and what you go on to do after your sport.
Maybe it's time for an ad campaign around college tennis and the top professional U.S. players, or not even just the U.S. players, but all the former college players that are having success on the pro tour. I don't know.
I'm going to write that down, Lisa.
Okay, good.
And there's a great contingent, as you know, that are out there that have done it. And I think celebrating college tennis in any way, shape, or form just brings greater awareness to it.
Absolutely. Well, Tim Cass, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank
and
you.
I'm excited to hear that USTA is really taking on it seems like a bigger role in college tennis and preserving that pathway for the American junior players. So yay for that.
Thank you very much.
And go ahead.
No, appreciate it. I appreciate the time, and excited about what you're doing for our sport as a whole. And really the USTA is here to try to assist in this pathway piece for our American juniors.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Tim, and to our listeners and our viewers, thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.